Hey, animals are weird.
Isn't that beer? Yes.
Welcome to episode 2 of Isn't That Weird? It is me, Kyle, your host, taking you through some of the weirdest things on this blue marble we call Earth. Specifically because it's been a rough 2020, and I think we need some levity, some coolness, but also let's learn some shit at the same time. How about that? I've got a list and reasons as to why animals are weird. And I'm not just talking about how like humans are animals and like we're batshit cuckoo crazy. I'm talking about evolutionary growths in animals that are there for some reason, don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but nonetheless, they exist. So we're going to go through some of them. I'm sure you've heard a few of these. There's all sorts of those lists online, but don't read those. Watch this. Yeah, that's totally not ripped from those. Actually, a lot of these I already knew. Coworker and I, we traded animal facts back and forth one day without Googling anything. And it was pretty impressive how many things we knew. We were both big fans of the old Animal Planet back in the day, I guess. So we're going to kick things off with the cows of the sea cows, manatees. Just big, blubbery things. Honestly, my heroes. They just float along, don't really bother anybody, just mowing down, just, living their life to the fullest. One weird thing, though, is how they nurse their young. You'd think there's like a nipple area on a manatee. Like somewhere a manatee's like all torso, but somewhere in the torso-ish area between the head and the flipper, there'd be like a nipple somewhere. Well, you're right. There's a couple, but they're here. They are behind each like flipper, so the calves actually nurse from their mother's armpit. Moving along, duck-billed platypuses, nature's mistake, right? Just a bunch of garbled together other animals into this weird thing that in my mind was always like yay big, but I think it's more like yay big. It's got like the tail of a beaver, the flippers of an otter, the skin of an otter, the duck bill of a duck. It's just a messed up animal. And it's one of only like 2 mammals that lay eggs. Because, as you'll know from grade school, mammals give live birth. Well, this is a mammal that lays eggs. It doesn't happen very often. It's the platypus and something called an enchidina? I don't know. Enchilada? I don't know what it is, but it's like a weird little porcupine hedgehog looking thing. Apparently that's the other one that lays eggs. That I had to Google because I needed to know what the other one was. But as I was Googling that, I started thinking, what if humans laid like baby-sized eggs? Like, that would just be crazy. You walk into somebody's house and there's just this mound of like straw and hay and pillows with like a heat lamp sitting over top of it, and you're just like, yeah, Junior's about to crack any day now. And finally, the weirdest thing with duck-billed platypus, the males have a little spike thingy that's venomous. This thing swims, this thing lives on land, this thing poops eggs, this thing is venomous. What is going on with a duck-billed platypus? Moving along to jellyfish, the plastic bags of the sea. They are really the biggest mindfuck to me because they just don't make sense. It does not make sense. There's no bones, there's no brains, there's no anything. Like I said, they're just a plastic bag with tentacles of death hanging from them that will just straight up murder you. There's a bunch of different kinds of jellyfish, which, again, is another weird thing. So you could understand this mistake evolving once, but into, like, the hundreds of different species that exist of jellyfish, and they're widely different, too, in size, shape, diet, poisonous, non, all that stuff. They are different. So why did this plastic bag have to evolve so much? And how? I don't really know. There's there's a really cool lake actually, and it's called Jellyfish Lake. So basically, what happened was this lake got cut off from all the other rivers and seas and stuff like that, and it was full of jellyfish. So there's nowhere for them to go, but in turn, that also meant that they didn't have any predators. So they were venomous, they're not anymore. They evolved to not have venom because they didn't need it anymore. And you can actually do tours of this lake and watch them like migrate every day across, swim with them, snorkel with them, and then watch them migrate back. Like you can actually see just these poofy, gooey clouds just jellyfishing along. That's cool, weird. I do kind of want to swim with them, even though I hate jellyfish. I do kind of want to do like the swim with the migration in this jellyfish lake. I think that'd be kind of cool. From that, we go from something that's not poisonous to something that will murder you. The box jellyfish. That is one of the worst jellyfish out there. And this thing can be like a foot in diameter and just got fuck you strings trailing behind it for like another 10 feet. So you got 1 foot plastic bag. Then you got 10 feet of death just floating along aimlessly, pretty much clear in the water. So like just death. And of course you can find those in Australia. You can find them at a lot of other places too. They are, like I said, they're very hard to see, and just like, what a shitty way to die, man. Like you're just bombing along and all of a sudden like you just get tickled by a shoelace and then now you're dead. Like that would just be, that'd be a really shitty way to go, and I would make sure that that's not on my tombstone. That being said, don't pee on a jellyfish sting. That is fake news. If anything, that's going to make it worse. What you want to do is get some seawater on it and then pour some vinegar on it, because the vinegar will actually neutralize it. I think vinegar will actually neutralize it, and the sting won't be quite as bad. Now, if it's something poisonous and venomous, then that's not going to stop that. This is just for your run-of-the-mill jellyfish sting that won't kill you, just hurt like a son of a bitch. Moving from the asshole jellyfish to even possibly a bigger fuck you to nature, the immortal jellyfish. So the one thing animals all seem to have in common, any life form seems to have in common, is it exists and then it dies. There's beginning and an end. Well, the immortal jellyfish is kind of like this. It exists, it grows up, it becomes a big fuck you plastic bag, decides it's almost done its time, and then it reverts back to this stage. So it just kind of just cuts off the circle, and unless something kills it, it will not die. Like, why do jellyfish exist? Stupid plastic bag fish. Moving from the sea to the trees, koalas. Little red beady-eyed assholes. I know everybody's all like on the save the koala thing right now because Australia was on fire for like a year, but koalas, kind of dicks. Plus, they have chlamydia. Like, I don't really want to snuggle with anything or hang out with anything that's just, you know, teeming with chlamydia. Apparently, it runs rampant through their species. They're just grumpy all the time. I don't know how the chlamydia started. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm sure it was involved a very lonely bushman and maybe even some tequila. But the other thing about these grumpy assholes is they have like fingerprints like us that can actually be mistaken for human fingerprints. Could you imagine a koala fingerprint being just close enough to your fingerprint that you got like charged with a murder because there happened to be a koala bombing around? Why would there be a koala? I don't know. Maybe the koala did the murder, and now I'm in jail. Grumpy asshole in a tree. 2, weird slimy goop on the ground. Snails. Snails can actually sleep for 3 years at a time. I mean, I could have done this like 2 months after my daughter was born. I probably could have slept for 3 years, but just finally power down and then like wake up when she's about to go to kindergarten, miss all that, all the in between. The in between is what kills you. From an animal or two that I don't really care for, actually, I got nothing against snails, to octopuses, an animal I love, as you will see. Squid, anything cephalopod. They're kind of in the same vein as jellyfish, where they don't really make sense, but instead of being a stupid, useless plastic bag asshole, octopuses are actually really, really badass. They're pretty cool, and they have a lot of really neat evolutionary tricks that has allowed them to survive and prosper for so long. And yes, it is octopuses. I still accept octopi because it's funny to use, but if you go back through the language, Latin, whatever, it's octopuses, not octopi. Apparently both of them are acceptable, but for the sake of this, I don't really care. Call it octopi, call it octopuses. I'm not going to give you shit about it. It doesn't make sense. The only thing I will give you shit about is if you use the wrong you're, there, or we're. Besides being like terrifyingly smart in some cases, octopuses are like the perfect fighting machine. They have 3 hearts that are spread out through their body, and they all control different systems. They have like 8 gangly tentacles, obviously, that can like beat you, strangle you, punch you in the nuts, and drink a beer at the same time. Wouldn't that be cool? Each of the tentacles has its own brain. It'd be like each finger here having its own brain. And then, so that means that an octopus has like 9 brains. I know people that don't even have 1, and an octopus has 9. They would be the best drummer in the world. I don't know why there isn't a cartoon of animal musicians with an octopus as a drummer. And the final weirdest thing, the beak. They have all this. They got the tentacles, they got the squishiness, they can go through tiny spaces, they're super smart, they got the multiple brains, they got the multiple hearts, and then they have a frickin' beak for a mouth. Just this horrifying. And the final weird animal fact for this round, and this is just going to be quick and easy. Kangaroos can't fart. Isn't that weird?